I saw something about that. This was kind of based on an experience you had as a usher at the
Mhm.
Chicago Symphony Orchestra. So can you explain that a little bit more and how that like is similar to Kenya's or if it's different?
Sure. So I worked at the Chicago Symphony Orchestra for a little over a year, and I was an usher, so I would have to stand by the door. I almost acted as like, just a representative for the orchestra. So if people had questions, I would answer those. I would help people to their seats. And also, I got a chance to listen to a lot of the musical material. So I got to see a lot of the concerts. I got to sit in on those. And so there was one night where mom came in with her daughter. And the surprising thing is at the symphony, I don't know if you all have been to symphony concerts before, and it may be a different culture, also talking about the Chicago Symphony, but they recommend for most of their repertoire, so, things that most adults will be interested in, don't bring children under the age of 8. But she was really young. So from the get go, I was a little worried about her because I just figured, oh yeah, she's not going to be interested in any of the music. This is a 2-hour concert. You're going to expect a little kid to just sit in on this. I was really surprised, but I during the concert, it was exactly as I expected. The little girl did not want to hear any of the music, so she was running around the aisles. She was bothering her mother, who was just trying to be attentive to the music. She was bothering all of the other attendants, all the patrons of the orchestra. So she was causing like a lot of noise, and obviously it took my attention. So I observed some of the actions, and I was like, this is a really interesting concept, because I also felt that with a character, being put in an unfamiliar environment and being changed by that, I love that whole dynamic. I love telling stories about someone being changed by their experience, something that they didn't think that they were going to ever give a try. And also, I figured that I wanted to have a strong Black lead as well, because I feel personally like in the African American community, a lot of times orchestral music isn't really something it's not very talked about. It's sort of like an ostracized genre of music. And so with me being really interested in it, I just felt like that was going to be the best foot forward. And yeah, I wish I knew the person who the film was inspired by, but I've seen her once. I saw the concert and I saw her one time, but just that experience alone was enough for me to say, hey, I think that would be a really good film idea. And I ran with it. At that point, I couldn't stop telling the story. It was just something that I was really passionate about. Because then, I told Michael from when we first met, I wanted to make a film about music, but I didn't know what that story was yet. So ironically, this experience gave me that story.
Can you explain a little bit more about your background about music and how you got into it?
Sure. Well, it kind of goes along with what Carlos says about just the orchestral environment. Like sometimes if you're not in the right place with the right people, like, sometimes financially, like it's sort of like inaccessible, especially because like somebody like a tuba is 10 grand, So like if you want to play tuba in the orchestra, yeah, you might have to foreclose your house or something. But I personally, I was a trumpet player, and I really didn't take it that seriously. My dad just had an old trumpet, and he's like, "I'm not buying you an instrument, so you're playing this." And I'm like, "Yeah, okay, that's fair." So I did it, and I was like, "All right, I'm not that into it, but like I played so many games as a kid that I was really inspired by the Nintendo games. So I'm like, maybe I'll start learning these on trumpet." So I started to get more into that classical world because I'm like going to read music. Now I have to learn this. Oh, it's such a drag. Kind of like Kenya. I think that's how all kids start. Like, why do I have to do this? But then once you start to see the payoff, like you start playing stuff you like, you're like, okay, I see it. It hits you. You have like a Kenya moment where you're like, what? So I got into classical music. I had to kind of claw my way in. I did like an internship with the Detroit Symphony because I grew up in Detroit. And then I started to realize like, there's contemporary orchestral music, and then there's like the old, Beethoven, and I feel like there's a gap there. So that's what we try to do with the score. Like it starts off more like what you'd expect, like the Mozart, Beethoven, but then by the end of it, we tried to make it more like a contemporary, like relatable sound. Because I really love the orchestra, and I love orchestral players and the instruments. But like when people think orchestra, they think like, oh, you're an 80-year-old guy like sitting and watching Mozart with like a fancy drink. Like that's not how it has to be. Anyone can enjoy the symphony, and also like you can write new orchestral music, and that's kind of where I'm at now, where like I think the orchestra needs like a new revival. Like I also don't like how you have to sit there super quiet. If you sneeze, people are like sneering at you. Like, that's just not right. You know, if you're at like any other concert, people are like shouting and cheering the orchestra on. Like, so that's kind of how I see it, and that's kind of what we tried to convey. But I don't even know if I answered your question, Yakira. That's kind of it.
No, you did. You did. You answered it like great. What were the emotions you were trying to, like, you wanted the audience to leave with after they watched this film?
Well, I think part of the success of the film is people that I've spoken with and just hearing reviews for the film, they say that it gives them a nostalgic feel. Now, I didn't necessarily go in with the intent to make it feel nostalgic, because I really wanted people to take a look at the film and just feel passionate about something. You know, if it's not about music, just passionate about, hey, I'm gonna do that one thing that I've been thinking about doing, that I've just been, you know, I'm not interested in that, but okay, I'll give it a shot. I just really wanted people to feel motivated in a way, and just to have sort of a happy feeling at the end, because I mean, it's certainly a happy ending for the film. But the nostalgia definitely caught me off guard, because, you know, I've heard so many stories of people saying, you know, my mother used to take me to these types of shows and I was never interested in it. And, you know, or I was, you know, a musician and I wasn't interested in playing music until I had that, you know, aha moment. And myself as an artist, I also felt that as well, because I was sort of a hobbyist when I was young. I've been drawing for a really long time, but my father, he put me into art classes for a really long time. And you know, there was a moment in time, or a couple of years, really like a period where I started to not really be interested in doing art as a career. So I wasn't really motivated. But then my art teacher, he tells me all the time, there was just that one moment, there was that one piece that I was working on where he finally started to see the gears turning in my head. So I feel like that's the emotion that a lot of people are getting from the film, but I really just wanted to give people a sense of motivation and happiness at the end of the film.
How far did you have to dig to still stay creative during COVID?
I can talk a little about that, since, you know, I'm a musician. It felt really impossible at first, because a lot of it is being around other musicians, and like, I mean, you need other people to play. So at first people were like, what do we do? How do we play? What's going on? You know? But like, you also find new ways to, but not by necessity, not choice. We were trying to like send recordings back and forth. We tried the Zoom thing, that was did not it doesn't work. So what we ended up doing was, you know, a lot of people in the music community were just, you know, recording. Everyone was an audio engineer. All of a sudden, you were recording tapes, sending it to people. But like, people would never do that during like peak season, because they'd be too busy gigging, or they'd be busy recording on a film or something like that. So it was cool to be able to see people like have time to like collaborate, like for real. They're like, oh, let me play the bass part for you. I'm not doing anything for the next like year. So I don't know. It was great to like be inspired by a different form of collaboration on the music side, at least.